So you went ahead and purchased a property remotely. Good for you, but now you have to get it leased remotely. Okay, in this video we'll show you how to do that. Collect the most money, spend the least amount getting it leased out. You'll get your nice blue house here, rented to a perfect tenant who will pay on time and love the home. And we'll show you a couple tips and tricks at the end on how to avoid Happy Herbie from taking advantage of you as your new tenant in your house. Okay, here come the slides. First slide, when you go to lease your property, you have to estimate the rent. You should have watched our previous video on the 1% of the value of your home. That's the 1% rent to value ratio. You want to check and make sure the area has the capability of renting that house for enough money to give you the cash flow, and you're going to advertise it for this amount. You're going to search the area when you go to lease the house because prices could have changed from when you purchased the house depending on the seasonality. Okay, so we'll cover searching a house here to get this 1% of the value in your rent. Okay, here's rental listings. You went ahead and purchased a house in Louisville, Kentucky, the southern suburbs here. And you can see we have a 4-bed, 2-bath for $1,600, a 4-bed, 2.5 for $1,800, 4-bed, 2.5, $1,800, and a 3-bed, 1-bath, 925 square feet for $1,100. So if you went ahead and purchased a house for $150,000 that was 3-bed, 2-bath, you should be able to get right about that out of it in this area. This $899 here is an apartment. Those are different. We're not going to consider that. There isn't even any square footage listed, so don't even worry about that. Okay, purchase prices. So you purchased a house somewhere in this same area, and it is $150,000 3-bed, 1-bath, or $160,000 3-bed, 2-bath, $152,000 3-bed, 2-bath. Let's say you purchase this one. This one should rent in this area for $150,000. 1% of that would be $1,500 per month. So you have yourself a nice new house with 2 bathrooms, and you should be able to rent it for $1,500 per month. Now let's talk about seasonality. So for seasonality, it really depends. You know, if you rent a house in the winter, it's probably gonna be on the market a little longer. Less people move in the winter. It's just kind of a general rule across the country. Further south, you get the less of a weather barricade you run into. So, you know, maybe in Louisville, it'll be warm enough most of the winter that you don't have much seasonality. But we will switch over to a seasonality chart. Okay, here's our seasonality chart for Louisville, Kentucky. We can check out this low area here, September. Check out this high area, February. Okay, check out this low area, March, April, then it jumps up in June and May. Okay, so generally spring, May, and June would be the best times in general to rent a property in my experience. Keep in mind, this isn't financial advice. If you take any advice that I give you, you're going to go ahead and lose all your money, all your houses. Your tenants run away with, you know, I don't know, your bank account and all that stuff. So just don't pay attention to me. You know, I'm just entertainment here, right? Right. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, December, January, February, go up to March. Oh, look, April. Look, yes, it climbs up in the summer and then it falls in the winter. Okay, climbs up in the summer here again. And you know, you might not think it's that much, but we're talking $100 a month here. That's $1,200 a year. That makes a big difference in the actual profitability of your house and being able to get the best rent out of it that you can. So keep that in mind. In Louisville, it looks like you're probably going to want to rent in May, June, and July, and make sure it's rented by the end of August, because in September it falls. So then it climbs again. You can see 2019 peaked out in April, and then now down into 2020 here. It's just kind of all level. You know, a little lower down in February, January, and then bumps up, and bumps up in March. Yep. Okay. So you know, it might only be extra $30 to $50 a month, but that's a lot of money over 12 months. Think about it. That's $600 difference, and now it's starting to drop off again as we go into fall. Okay, so that's That's a good description of what time of year you want to try to rent your property. So if you purchase a property in, like, I don't know, the trough, October, November, September, you might want to do like an 8-month lease to have that lease come up in April or March or May. That way, when you're looking for a new tenant, you're going to capture the best price for the property, or when your tenant's lease comes up in 8 or 9 months, you can raise the price of rent on them to get it back up to the rent to value ratio it should be and competitive in the marketplace for that season. Keep seasonality in mind. You can just Google a seasonality chart for whatever area you're in. Check out Zumpers. If you check out Zumpers, they do a pretty good job at estimating the rents across the years. And you'll know kind of how the seasonality is in your area. Okay, so that'll cover it for this slide. We can estimate the rent on our $150,000 house to be $1,400 to $1,500 per month in the right season. We want to make sure that we get that on our rental here. And you're going to go ahead and put the home up for rent. Okay, next slide. So we need to discuss how to advertise the home. If you have other rentals in the area, you might have a website. If you have enough of them, you can put it on there. But typically online, the main one to use nowadays in 2020 would be Zillow. They allow you to list one property for free at a time. They also own HotPads and Trulia, or, they kind of own each other or whatever. It's all the same company now. So when you list and advertise on Zillow for your rental, it shows up on these as well, giving you 3 sites instead of 1. Zillow also has a nice messaging backend for you where your prospective tenants can message you, relay information, ask questions, and exchange contact info so that you can talk to them in person, over the phone, or text them directly. The site that you want to avoid is kind of crossed off here. It's really full of scams and not moderated. If you go on Craigslist, you're going to see a ton of real estate scams. It is basically 90% scams, with occasionally a person that doesn't understand how Zillow works trying to advertise their house on there. You can take my recommendation or not. I don't really care, but I'm just saying, if you advertise on Craigslist, you are literally wasting your time. Pay attention though, because you will get messages saying, hey, I saw your house advertised on Craigslist for $1,000 less. Well, that would be a scam, because they go over to Zillow, take your pictures, and make a Craigslist posting. So beware of that. Keep your eye out for it when somebody messages you on Zillow saying, hey, I saw that property on Craigslist. You can just tell them, hey, that one's a scam. We don't advertise on Craigslist. We'd love to schedule a time for you to see the house if it's in your price range. Usually it's not in their price range, because on Craigslist, whoever that scammer is advertising it for $500 to $1,000 less than you are per month, and they think they're getting a deal. And people fall for it all the time. Trust me, like it's a mess over there. But yeah, just avoid that. Stick with the Zillows and the HotPads and the Trulias of the world. You'll have a lot better results, and that's where everybody looks now anyway. All right, next slide. This slide talks about credit checks. You'll want to do this for each tenant. I definitely recommend all my family and friends that they use multiple services for any one of these. Like TransUnion here is a large credit agency, and they do eviction checks and credit checks and criminal checks. So you want to get all those services on your application for your tenant. And these are all sites here that allow you to check credit for your tenants. You can literally just Google tenant credit check, and you'll get 30 or 40 sites that pop up. These are kind of some of the top ones here, and some that I have experience with that are inexpensive to deal with. So first of all, there's TransUnion. TransUnion is one of the largest, or I guess one of the big 3 credit agencies out of there, credit reporting agencies, and they'll do all of this for you. And typically it's like $20 to $30 for that credit and eviction check, and it's securely done with the tenant directly on their website. So you don't have to hold on to their social security number and all that stuff, get copies of their driver's license, whatever. TransUnion's website takes care of all that for you. Another good one is preapprovedrenter.com, I believe. You can just kind of put that in Google and it'll pop up. They use TransUnion right here, but they have a different system that's a little more user-friendly for you and the tenant. Me personally, this is the one I use, and I bill the tenant. I let the tenant enter their card info, and Pre-Approved Renter takes care of all of that billing for me. And that kind of weeds out the tire kickers for tenants there, because you get tenants that come by and say, hey, I want to take a look at it. And you say, well, hey, you got to get a background and a criminal check and eviction check before we go ahead and show it to you. So are you sure you're serious about that? And then they'll just be like, oh, no, I just want to look at it. So then you only get serious people if you tell them they have to complete this. Pre-Approved Renter also does a pre-approval, where the tenant doesn't have to pay. They can just upload all their info and send it over to you for a review. And then prior to moving in, they would pay for this background check and eviction check. That runs them about, I don't know, like $39, $40 per person. And me personally, I have every adult that's living in the house credit and background checked, and then go from there. Avail is another one. It's really similar to Pre-Approved Renter. We'll talk about Avail a little later on when we're talking about leasing. That's what I use for leasing. But Avail will do the same thing as Pre-Approved Renter. They'll just do it for more money. It's like $50 or $55 per person to have a credit and background check through them, to where it's like $15 or $20 less or whatever through Pre-Approved Renter and TransUnion. So then there's the other sites. You can Google it. Most of them are good. I mean, you can get reviews and ratings on them. These are the three that I have direct experience with. The very first home back in the day that I had a tenant move into, I used TransUnion. It was great. Now I use Pre-Approved Renter for all my background checks. I don't use Avail for background checks. I just use it for leasing, but I just list it here because you can do a background check through it. Okay, there you go. That's your credit check slide. Next slide. So we'll go to online leasing. You can actually send your tenant or prospective tenant a snail mail lease to sign. But why would you do that when you can do everything e-signature right now? It'll save you like, I don't know, $3 or $4 on postage when you're sending them a big old pack of paperwork to sign. With these sites, Avail, we talked about that previously, and Zillow, they will both manage your rentals. I use Avail, but simply because it's half the price of Zillow to do the same thing. Avail will allow you to collect payments, so will Zillow. Avail will allow you to generate a lease, so will Zillow. The services are just about the same between the two. It's just Zillow costs more, so I go with Avail here. So as far as collecting payments, what you want to do, you always have to have the option for the tenant to mail you a check. If that's the case, you want to make sure that check clears before you give them the keys to the property. If that check doesn't clear, you give them the keys to the property and they move in. Well, guess what? When that check bounces, now they've moved in. You have to actually evict them instead of telling them, no, your check bounced, you can't move in. It's a lot easier to tell them they can't move in because their check bounced than it is to evict them after their check bounces. Pay attention to that, people. I see a lot of people make mistakes when they do this, and they, oh yeah, here, thanks for the check, Mr. or Mrs. Tenant, go ahead and here's the keys, go ahead and move in. And then next thing you know, you got an eviction on your hands within 3 or 4 days of a lease being signed. It's kind of crazy. Okay, so auto ACH, both Zillow and Avail will let you ACH. Avail has a great automatic ACH system where your tenant can sign up for automatic payments. That makes it super easy for them and pretty much guarantees, as long as there's money in their account, you're not going to be left without a rent payment. So then, in the lease, you're typically, I think in really every area, going to be required to give them an address where they can mail a physical payment to, either a check or money order. You can do this as well. I mean, honestly, it's a lot easier to do auto ACH. And frankly, if you're dealing with somebody that doesn't have a checking account, I don't know if they're going to pass your background and credit check anyway. Just keep that in mind. You can collect a physical check. I definitely recommend the auto ACH or ACH capability, where it just debits it directly out of their bank account and puts it into yours. Avail includes that with their service, and Zillow does as well. All right, there you go. That's payment. Next slide. So showing the property, eventually somebody's going to respond to your advertisement there and want to look at the property and possibly sign a lease. With those e-sign leases, you can usually email those. If a tenant walks through the property and says, hey, I want to go ahead and get a lease signed for this, you would send them over the pre-approval or the credit check email. They'll fill that out. As long as that comes back okay, you'll then send them over the lease to e-sign. But anyway, they're going to go ahead and look through the property first. So you can have your realtor do that. This is what I do. I have my realtor or realtors look through properties in whatever area they're in, and then show the tenant through the property. I pay my realtor 1/2 month's rent, which is really good for having them go through a rental property, show it, and get it leased. You can also have a property manager handle the entire placing and leasing process for you. That's kind of up to you. You can recruit a property manager. They'll typically bill you 1 month's rent. They'll run the credit check, they'll show the tenants through, and they'll hand the tenant the keys so that you're hands off all the way. If you really don't feel like dealing with the leasing process, you can have the property manager do it for you. It's just going to cost you more. It's kind of up to you. If you feel you can afford to pay this person or company $1,500, for 1 month's rent on this hypothetical house we're talking about, then go ahead and do that. It'd probably be a lot easier if you don't have enough time to deal with a realtor or scheduling tenants to go through. But you can have them do that, and you just Google property managers in whatever city, in this case Louisville, Kentucky, and you go from there. Then if you have friends and family in the area, if you're remote, they can also show them through, but do you really want them doing that? I'd rather have a professional show my tenants through. I guess in an emergency, I would have a friend or a family member that lived in the area open the door up for a tenant. But there's kind of question marks here. Maybe you have some friends or family that are experienced in realty or are experienced in showing houses. So yeah, you go with them, probably be a little less expensive, maybe free. But not everybody has that, and I would definitely recommend a property manager or a realtor above friends and family. But everybody has their own situation, so you just kind of figure it out for yourself there. All right, next slide. So you've gone through everything, you've shown the tenant through, they've passed the background eviction and bankruptcy, all that check, and they've signed the lease, all their checks have cleared. So now you got to get them the keys. The way I do it, I have my realtor leave a lockbox on there, and either the realtor shows up and hands them the keys and removes the lockbox on the move-in day, or we give them the code to the lockbox so that they can arrive anytime they want on that move-in day at their convenience. They seem to like that a lot more, especially in the current global sickness thing that's going on. No realtors over there. They just give them the code. The lockbox opens. They have keys to their house. They seem to like that right now. I don't know. Maybe we'll do another video in the future there on what you can do if things change. But yeah, they like that lockbox with the keys in it thing. So yeah, you need a checklist, right? So you have to have a move-in checklist for them to figure out what's wrong with the property. It's not really required in every area. It's not a legal thing. A lot of times you put it in the lease anyway, but you give them a move-in checklist. It benefits them and benefits you. The tenant can mark off anything that they don't like or are dissatisfied with or that's broken, and you can follow up and fix that, right? So here's what happens. If you don't give them a checklist and they go ahead and break everything, at the end of their lease, they can move out and be like, hey, that was all broken when we moved in. Where's the checklist that's signed by everybody? And then you can say, well, no, it wasn't, but then you go back and forth and they end up getting most of their security deposit back when you should have kept the whole thing. So yeah, there you go. If it's in the lease that they're required to submit a checklist and they don't, then any damages that you assess at the end, they really can't come back on because it's in the lease that they had to submit a checklist and didn't. And then the other thing it does is make sure that they're happy because it gives them an opportunity to mark off things that they're not happy with. Like, I don't know, broken sink, broken light, broken something, a door doesn't open the right way, whatever. Maybe there's, I don't know, a bunch of raccoons living in the tree in the backyard and they keep chasing after their chickens that they're moving in with. Yeah, that happens. But yeah, they would put that on the checklist there. And you as the property owner and the landlord would be able to go ahead and fix that for them. That benefits you because a month and a half down the road, when they say, hey, they're not happy with something, You can say, hey, well, it wasn't broken before. You didn't put it on that checklist, so you're either gonna have to pay or fix that yourself, or maybe do something where you pay for parts or something like that, and they fix it. And it helps you out to lower expenses later on, because if it's not something they marked, then you definitely can come back and say, hey, that really wasn't on the checklist. So how, it was probably broken by you guys. So I'll tell you what, I'll go ahead and send you the new faucet if you put it in. It's up to you if you do that. I don't really care. It's your property, not mine. I don't have my tenants deal with any plumbing. I make sure I send somebody over there to deal with the plumbing. But if it's something simple like nick in the wall, or like a board coming off the wall, like a baseboard or something, they can just tack it back in there, just let you know about it. It's not like you're gonna really mess with them on that when they move out anyway, and keep their deposit because there's a little nail hanging out of a baseboard that they put back in and you didn't have to deal with. So yeah, just think about that. And then once you complete the items on the checklist, you go ahead and follow up with them to make sure everything was handled well. We did another video that included tenant follow-up. I think it's a plumbing repair video. You want to make sure everything was fixed up the right way to their satisfaction. And then when the month rolls over into the next month, they have no reason to not pay their rent. There you go. Pay your rent on time, Mr. Tenant. We got all that fixed up for you. Hey there, thanks. Yep, all right, next slide. So then you got to kind of beware. This is the slide you're waiting for, what to look out for in a tenant. So we have Herbie, who previously lived in one of our other houses. We didn't recognize his name as one of the people that wanted to look through one of our new houses. So Herbie goes through and says, hey, I really want to lease this place. I got all this cash here for you. We don't need a credit check. Not that I was a bad tenant before or anything. But I'll just pay you cash every month, and don't need a bank account. Look, I just got a stack of cash in my hands. So yeah, okay, here's some things that Herbie can do to kind of take advantage of you as a tenant. So some tenants will be like, hey, can I go ahead and pay you in cash, and we can kind of avoid the whole banking system? That should throw up some red flags there. Like, why don't you have a bank account, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant? I like to do auto ACH, so no, I really can't accept a big envelope full of cash once a month through the mail because I live 1,000 miles away. So look out for that. People will offer you cash. If every now and then a tenant pays in cash in person for whatever reason, that's fine, but they should be paying normally with a check, money order, or preferably automatic ACH with one of the two services we talked about. When you're running that credit check, get some pay stubs from them. They can say, hey, I make $150,000 a year. That's like 10 times the rent. Should be good to go on that. And then you're like, oh, great. Okay, perfect. Come on, move in. Well, and then they didn't submit any actual pay stubs or no recent pay stubs. And it turns out they lost their job. Right now you want to get up to the date pay stubs. You want to get the 3 or 4 most recent pay stubs that tenant has had to make sure their income matches up with what they said. If it doesn't, you have every right to deny them the rent as long as it meets your standards. I do 3x the rent as income. So, if my rent is $1,000 a month, that tenant needs to make $3,000 per month in order to qualify for that home. Be careful with that. In some jurisdictions, that is not legal. There's all kinds of different jurisdictions all over the country. Make sure you check yours wherever you're renting your home out at, and make sure that that's legal to do. Okay, the other thing to do is establish a minimum FICO score. In a lot of jurisdictions you must have a 650 or better FICO to move into this property. So when somebody applies and they know that their FICO is a 590, and they told you before that it's a 680, well, there's a ton of free sites out there like Credit Karma and any bank, pretty much, or any credit card. If you have any service like that, you can sign up for free credit monitoring with a credit report. There's no reason that tenant shouldn't have access to whatever their credit says. So if they come at you and it's a 590 FICO, you have every right to deny them to move in. And here's the deal. Even if they're making $150,000 a year on your $1,000 a month rental, that more than qualifies them for pay. But if they have a 590 FICO, there's something else going on there. They're missing payments all over the place. They have bills past due, bankruptcy, all this other stuff. You got to watch out for that. You really want to do both together. You must qualify for your pay stubs and your income and you must qualify for your FICO. Now keep in mind, I rent and run the credit background check on every adult that lives in the property. So you're going to run into situations where, one adult has the pay but not the FICO. The other adult has the FICO but not the pay. So it's up to you what you do there. Usually it's not a problem for me. The person with the good FICO qualifies there, and the person with the good pay qualifies there. Because that spouse or significant other, whoever with the good FICO, is going to scream and yell at the person with the pay to pay the dang rent so it doesn't hurt their credit. So there you go. You got a team of people working for you at that point. Okay, and then on the background check, you definitely want to eliminate people that have had evictions in the past. And this is typically illegal. You just check your jurisdiction. I'm not a lawyer. Just check the laws wherever you're at. Consult an attorney, some would say. But you want to eliminate people that have had evictions in the past or recent bankruptcies. For me, if a tenant had a bankruptcy like 10 years ago that's discharged, like, hey, okay, I get it. That was 10 years ago. You haven't had a bankruptcy since, so all right, good. But hey, if a tenant had an eviction 5 years ago, I'd be like, that's not really going to work. The ad actually said you can't have any evictions, but you had an eviction, so you're disqualified. It's unfortunate for Herbie here that he's then disqualified because he just paid $50 or $40 or whatever for your background check, and you don't have to refund that to him. And I don't. I lay it out to them what they need. And if they fail the background check and they knew about it, it's not getting refunded to them. No, the site I use just keeps the money. They can fight the site for the money. Not my problem. Basically they lied. And I don't want a tenant in there that lies to me because they're telling me and promising me in the lease that they're going to pay the rent. Well, if they're lying to me about any of this, they're probably lying to me about wanting to actually pay the rent. So it's not happening. Okay, so just keep an eye out on all those services we discussed. We'll check for all this stuff and have them upload pay stubs and all of that. So make sure you check all that, cross it off your list, and get a good tenant moved in. So that'll do it for leasing properties remotely. This video was probably a little dry. I try to make them as entertaining as possible, but that's how you make cash renting and spend the least amount possible bringing in a tenant. Look out for what Herbie's gonna do over there. He plays some games with you, trying to get into your house and not pay your rent. Okay, right over here is gonna be a subscribe thing, and down here's a little thumb, probably right below Herbie. Hit that thumb for me, and then right here's another video to watch. Okay, well, hey, y'all have a good day out there.